Well, it's happened again, guys. Last Thursday, there was a meeting in Washington, D.C., and there were Congress people, there were UFO experts, and apparently some military officials. And again, discussing about what is to be done about this UAP phenomenon. But, folks, that's not the real questions right now. Not what we're seeing in the sky, but what really happened in our ancient past. UFO experts and apparently some military officials. And again, discussing about what is to be done about this UAP phenomenon. But, folks, that's not the real questions right now. Not what we're seeing in the sky, but what really happened in our ancient past. And I think as we go along the video, stick with me, we're going to get into some of the Sumerian theologies and see how that connects today. So thanks again for coming by Daniel 9 Studios. Let's get busy. Oh, so once again, thanks for stopping by, guys. I want to start off with some narrative that has to do with this meeting that took place on Thursday. And what I have here is this gentleman, and his name is Russ Colhart, I think it is. Hope I said that right. And of course, this is News Nation. And he's going to kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of what I think is, value, because the government is obviously not giving much as far as these UAP files, and as I said from the previous videos, they were horrible. So let's take a peek and see what he has to say.
We now know that's the case. This whole forum's all about trying to move on for that, to try and get a disclosure plan underway. And that's why it's quite heartening to see what the Trump administration's doing with the announcement of this UAP governance panel, and also with the science advisory panel that Professor Avi Loeb will be presiding over. They're positive moves, but I think the idea behind the non-profit Disclosure Foundation is that it's time for thinkers, people in the Congress. There's a notable batch of speakers who are going to be attending, particularly Senator Mike Rounds and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So that signals it's a bipartisan effort now. And the big questions that we're going to be trying to resolve, I'll be there myself, is indeed, what is a plan for disclosure? How on earth can we move forward with what will be, as the Steven Spielberg movie intimed, the idea of a momentous ontological shock to the human race? If the government does make a disclosure, what does that mean? And that's what's going to be discussed at the forum this week. Hey, no, I think we're being subject.
Stop right there. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Hannah, I think we're being subjected to a bit of a tease right now by the government. I don't think they know quite what to do. At the moment, the big bear in the room is we've had all of these dumps of files which are basically acknowledging, yes, the Pentagon has been investigating UAPs, and yes, there is a mystery. And moreover, these can't be dismissed skeptically as weather balloons or atmospheric phenomena. The big bear in the room is the government going to address what David Grush, Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton, James Lukatsky, and other key witnesses, some of them firsthand, have testified, which is that there is a legacy retrieval program for UAP technology and biologics. The claim that is not being addressed by the administration is whether or not there are aliens that have been recovered, both technology and biology.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So I looked up on a couple of websites, and that meeting that had happened um, in Washington, D.C. is open to the public. And so I have downloaded it, and that is going to be my next video. I have no idea what's going to be in there. Um, I don't think they're going to be giving the public a whole lot of extra material, but at least they'll hopefully give us some insight. So, anyways, this guy, his name is Chris Mellon, and he's kind of talking about the same things here. So let's see what he has to say.
That's absolutely true. And I'm sorry to say that these kinds of incursions have been happening at bases all over the United States and overseas. And it isn't as widely known as it ought to be. But what's happening to Russia today at the hands of the Ukraine with drones could happen just as easily here tomorrow, I'm afraid.
But you're saying they're not drones, they're something else?
We don't know. That's part of the problem. It's a mystery. So in some cases, it probably is drones. In other cases, it seems to be something more advanced. And this has been going on for many, many years, for decades back to World War II, but not as aggressively, not as much in our face as we've been experiencing lately. Well, we're talking about a couple of possibly different things. So one of the difficulties is when we see these lighted objects moving over an airfield, are they Chinese drones or are they something much more exotic? And in many cases, it's hard to tell. So it's not clear that the whistleblowers have any indication or knowledge of these particular events. They do, some of them have information, it seems, that suggests that our government has a great deal more than it has revealed to date.
You say there are hundreds and hundreds of new sightings by our military every year, and that many
Correct.
of these UAPs are over sensitive bases and over Navy ships while they're at sea. You say UAPs violated airspace over Langley Air Force Base every night for 2 weeks, and that the Air Force eventually moved an entire squadron of F-22s out because it was, quote, mystified about what those objects were or what they were doing.
That's correct. And that is a fairly staggering fact. And the Air Force to this date and the administration do not seem to know where those objects came from, despite the fact that it went on for 17 days.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Okay, so before we move on, I just wanted to show this one newspaper clipping, and this is not any kind of a hoax or anything. Back in 1952, they called them UFOs back then, that were, all over Washington, D.C., and they shut down the airport, and I can't even remember. I think it was almost like 2 weeks or something like that. I got that from Dr. Chuck Missler, outstanding biblical scholar. But nonetheless, this happened back in 1952, so, it should be no surprise that it's happening today. So with that, what I'd like to do is to move on, and we're going to take a dive here and talk about who the Anunnaki are, because we already know that these things are flying all over our skies. But if we look at the ancient text, we might have an idea who's flying these things. So this is Pastor Perry Gesberd. I ran into him on accident. I've never actually listened to him before, but you know, I believe everything that, or we both believe. All right, this is Pastor Perry Gesberd. I ran into this gentleman by accident. I've never heard him before, but when he starts talking about the Anunnaki and how it somewhat relates to the biblical narrative, and ultimately it relates to what's going on today, I thought he had a pretty simple explanation. So let's go ahead and see what this gentleman has to say.
So for the ancient Sumerians, these were the sons of God, celestial beings that descended from the heavens and began to rule over mankind. And I want to separate myth from reality and also point out where the stories share several similarities. So first, you must understand that the Hebrew word Elohim is used to describe all divine or celestial activity. While it's mainly used to represent the Creator, the true God of heaven and earth, it's also used to describe the little g gods of Egypt, the deities of Babylon, or the angels and judges that the Lord placed over certain tribes and regions of planet Earth. So let's begin in Exodus chapter 20, where the Lord Jehovah introduces himself as the unique, singular Elohim, the one who brought Israel out of the land of Egypt and out of their house of slavery. Verse 1, and God spoke, which is the Hebrew Elohim. The divine being said these words, I am the Lord your God, which is translated from the original Hebrew phrase, Annunaki Yad-He-Vav-He Eloheka. But everyone who lived back then, 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, all of them fully understood that there are many Elohim or celestial beings.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, great theologian, he's passed on, said it very simply. Elohim, we have our God, the Father, Son, and the Spirit. Well, the Son is that visible Elohim of God, and of course, when the Son became Jesus, became a human, now he is like us. Still, you have angelic beings in heaven that are Elohim. Now, yes, he is Elohim, but he is also man now. So that's why they call him, I believe they call it the second Adam. But nonetheless, but he also describes who the Elohim are as if anybody that exists in the supernatural world, whether it's the Lord or angelic beings or demonic beings or people that have passed on that are no longer here. They went to their spiritual destination. As far as I know, that's what people like to call, or excuse me, what Dr. Heiser would call Elohim. So let's continue.
What I call little g gods, who are constantly operating all over planet Earth. And they are trying to turn you away from the true Elohim and cause you to bow down and worship them. But you should have nothing to do with them, the Bible says, because their presence in your life will ruin your entire family. Look at verse 3. And you shall have no other Elohim, little g gods before me or in my presence, the Lord says. The Wycliffe translation says it this way, you shall not have any alien or foreign gods in place of me or instead of me. Verse 5.
Okay, I'm just going to stop right here real quick. What he's talking about can be verified also in the book of Deuteronomy. And basically, what it was when Abraham became the father of Israel, of the nation Israel, They were all the other nations around Israel that God himself had appointed watchers or angelic beings to watch over them, to rule over them, to protect them. But eventually, those angelic beings fell as well. So they're in the same boat as Satan. So let's keep going here.
Now let's look at Psalms 82, verse 1, that says, God, Elohim in the Hebrew, Elohim stands in the congregation of the mighty, El in the Hebrew, and he judges among the other Elohim, little g gods. Listen to the ESV translation. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. Well, who is he speaking to? It's the divine beings that the Lord created to rule over certain tribes and territories and nations on planet Earth, who the book of Enoch tells us were called watchers. Angels are divine beings that the Lord authorized to be his representative over certain territories of earth, including the regions the ancient Sumerians and Babylonians lived in thousands of years ago. And these celestial watchers rebelled against the Lord and his righteousness, his divine order, and they pierced the veil that separates the heavenly realm from the physical, where they cohabited with humans to produce various tribes of giants, whom the Bible calls Nephilim. So God addresses this assembly of rebels in Psalms 82 when he asks the question, how long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? He said, you're not doing what I ordered you to do, which is to rescue the weak and the needy, to deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And then he said in verse 6, I have said you are gods, you are Elohim, you are little g gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, which is the Hebrew, the sons of the Most High, the sons of the Supreme Elohim, sons of God. These are the angels that are called sons of God. But because you have failed to govern as I commanded, you shall die like men. When the sons of God, the fallen angels, mated with human women, and they produced various tribes of Nephilim who ruled over territories and cities, nations and tribes. And because they were part human and part angelic, Enoch tells us that when they died, they could not return to their creator, but they would remain.
All right. I think that kind of sums it up. So, I thought that was a pretty good explanation. You're looking at the Sumerians from an ancient biblical perspective, okay? But this next video, this is a good one because this has to do with one of the gentlemen that was at one of those meetings 3 weeks ago or a month ago, right after President Trump had released those UAP files. So this is next. This is Perry Stone, and I don't watch him all the time, but he's a pretty legit guy. So, but I believe this is Pastor. I'm going to have to look. So let me just switch over here. Okay, that's much better. Okay, this guy's name is, what is his name? I just know his name is Pastor Shane. I forgot his last name. I'm really sorry. I hope they bring his name up. My bad.
To the meeting that you were in recently, just some time back, but I want to focus on what they showed you that you said actually was quite frightening. This was not AI generated. This was documented. These had been apparently in government files. Things are slowly being released now, but if they release what you saw, how would the American people maybe respond? A lot of them will be skeptical, of course, but how do you think people would respond if they saw what you saw? And I want you to share with the Manifest audience some of the things you saw, if that's possible.
Sure. Well, as I shared with you before, I haven't just been in one meeting. I've been in at least 3 to 4 meetings. Each meeting escalated, one built upon another. But in the course of this last meeting, I was shown documents, crafts, and even creatures.
Did they have pictures, video?
They had pictures of creatures. Some of them look like your typical, what you'd think alien.
What people call alien.
What people call alien. Elongated creatures, longer than normal arms, larger than normal heads, slim bodied kind of beings. Even together on trying to figure out what this is, where it's from, and what to do about it. That governments were cooperating on this. Now again, these weren't government officials, but supposedly people who had rubbed shoulders or were in high level knowledge, had access to knowledge.
Was there any, because I heard someone mention this, I can't remember who it was, they had like translucent bodies or something?
Yes, they look like translucent
bodies. Almost like
bodies.
a hologram, but solid three-dimensional, actual, you could touch them.
So I don't know if anybody's ever done this. I like watching strange shows anyway, but yeah,
Okay.
You know. So
we're not getting this from a strange show.
No,
just
we're
so
not.
you'll know.
Sometimes
Okay.
I'll get on a YouTube binge, but you know how you've watched, and again, these weren't Bigfoot-ish style beings, but you know how people will say there's a Bigfoot and supposedly it's kind of translucent. You can see the outline of. Yes. That was part of the stuff. What I want to make clear to everybody is that I've heard pastors say that, and some of the podcasters say, well, this isn't going to shock the church. Believe some of the spin. And again, the presenters in the meeting, in all of the meetings that I was in, but especially the last couple and especially the last one, the presenters of that meeting were concerned about one thing: get your churches ready for how this is going to be spun and what the Bible actually says on this, so that all of a sudden they're not believing a lie that we were seeded by another, an interstellar being or race of beings that came down here and we're the ones who were created. And by the way, after we took a break, I was talking to you about this. There's actually in ancient Sumerian and Akkadian literature.
That's right.
There's
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I want to take the UFO and the UAP phenomena and talk about some of these meetings that were going on while these files were being released, and of course this went on last Thursday. And I think this helps kind of take the first two segments and gives you an idea on some of the real origins of whatever or whoever are piloting these crafts. So let's keep going here.
The story of Enki and Enlil, and I know you know this well, but Enlil is portrayed as a harsh ruler who wants to control humanity. And Enki is portrayed as a benefactor who gives humanity knowledge and understanding, technology, and freedom. Well, according to the Gnostic documents and these teachings, they're teaching that the one that portrayed as the harsh ruler is Jehovah, the God that we serve.
And Lucifer is the good guy.
And Lucifer's the good guy.
See, that's the deception.
And that's the reason he gave...
That's the deception. That's what we're talking about.
That's the reason he gave Adam and Eve access to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil so that they would know that they were being enslaved by this God and that they could become free moral agents and do whatever they wanted to do. That same exact philosophy, Gnosticism, Spiritism, mysticism, New Ageism is getting ready to be spun, but on the heels, I believe, on the heels of this idea of interstellar, intergalactic beings who helped bring us or put us on this planet for good reasons. And when I hear Dr. Stephen Greer, and I have great respect for him because he's a brilliant man, but when I hear Dr. Stephen Greer at the Washington press conference just this last week make this statement that preachers need to stop calling these beings demons or even referring to them as demonic.
Okay. I talked about this a couple videos back, so if you haven't had a chance to see my other videos, feel free. But it's a good cop, bad cop scenario. You have the Lord our God, the Father, Son, and Spirit, who is God, and his line of humanity, his line that he calls his own. So when it comes to like the Sumerians and the Babylonians, and then of course Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and so on and so forth, it's just been nothing but a succession of pantheons, gods, just like this gentleman was talking about. And it's here today in the end times. The only difference is they're showing up in spaceships. But, you know, it's the same. It's the same thing. We just have a modern lens. And if you talk to a lot of the spiritualists, I've had them on not on my channel, but I've commented on their videos, and they're saying the same things. Well, these really, really good Nordic aliens, and they work with these aliens, but these bad reptilian aliens, they're, so that's the good versus evil, but really, it's just a bifurcation, just like a snake's tongue. It's all evil. So let's keep going.
Because it's going to make us look foolish.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yeah. Now we're hearing that once again, except this time. What is going to happen if all of a sudden there is craft or there are beings that are introduced or that come to the forefront that present themselves? What is going to happen? And how are we going to respond? And then what are we going to say? And in fact, in one of the discussions, and I cannot remember where this was discussed at, so you'll have to forgive me, the question was, are we going to baptize them or are they going to baptize us?
Whoa.
And for those
Wow,
of you who
listen
think
to
this
that.
conversation is
Man.
absolutely foolish, most people don't know that the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox churches have already been, for over a year, preparing their leadership how to respond to this situation. And yet, the evangelical Protestant Christian movement, especially the charismatic Pentecostal Christian movement, has no idea how to respond to this and has no biblical knowledge
say
for the most
nothing
part.
about it and it'll go away.
Yeah.
That's kind of what
this is not going away.
Well, let the prophecy. The seed of the serpent were the giants. And I don't have time to get into all this. I'm telling you, this is in-depth teaching. Now, here's a big one.
Here's a big one.
200 years before Jesus was born, the rabbis taught that when the giants died in the flood, they became demons.
Right.
They became the evil spirits that roamed the earth. Now, this is interesting. And again, I'm giving you 2 hours of teaching and trying to put it in 4 minutes. And so what I want to share with you is this, that when you see these unusual creatures, you only have 3 choices. Number one, it's a government creation. It's a hybrid creation that the government has messed with. They've mingled animals. They've done DNA. They cloned Dolly the lamb. They're cloning something, producing something
Which is, by
weird.
the way, mentioned in the book of Enoch, the book of Giants, the book of Jasher.
All of it mentions the mingling of seed.
The mingling of
there.
seed. It's Daniel,
They
Daniel
did
chapter
it
2,
in the
verse
days
43.
of Noah. That's it. So, or your second choice is, could some of it be angelic? Well, Ezekiel saw the wheel within the wheel with the eyes, which looks like, if you didn't know what light bulbs were or lights were, it looked like a UFO. And people have pointed that out.
Yeah.
The only third choice you got, if it's not natural, it's supernatural, it's either angelic, folks, or it's either satanic. And just as the fallen angels produced a race that were giants, something is happening in the spirit realm. And I told him on a program the other day, I said, there were giants in the earth in David's day and in Noah's day, 5 giants in David's day, and we have 5 tech giants.
Exactly.
And when those tech giants produce AI with a person, they put 6 fingers on their hand. That's how you know it's fake. There's an extra finger on every hand.
Right.
They did. I seen pictures. I said, this is crazy. Why is AI putting 6 fingers on everybody's hand when they make artificial intelligence video? Because the last giant mentioned it by the Lord's word, the word of the Lord in the Bible, that David killed was Saph. Saph from Gath, and he had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each feet. There's the parallel of AI with 6. I mean, it's crazy.
What even makes this crazier is the Bible says the last days, that the days of Noah will once again resurge upon the planet. I want to read a scripture. Luke 21:11 says, in those days there'll be great earthquakes in divers places, famines, pestilence, fearful sights, and great signs shall be from heaven. And the
So who exactly were the Sumerians? Well, I think the Sumerians were ruled by the same beings that are returning today. And you can sort of see the parallels. You know, you have, all this UAP disclosure, and you also have, of course, comparisons with these ancient texts. And now you can sort of see the parallels brewing, whether it's Sumerian texts or Babylonian, or maybe you still like to, worship the Greek gods or the Roman gods, or you can be Gnostic, New Age, Theosophy. It's all the same thing. It only comes from one source, okay? And that source is malevolent. So I want to move on now to Daniel 9 Studios Conspiracy Corner. Got all kinds, or not all kinds, but a couple of things I'd like to show you. So let's get moving there. All right. So for this Conspiracy Corner this week, I didn't find a whole lot going on, but what I did find was, and this was on, again, News Nation. I think her name is Katie Pavlich or something like that. She used to be on Fox. Apparently she left. Probably a good thing. But again, they're talking about this new technology, these new energy weapons. And I mean, I've heard about them, but I had no idea that we were ready to buy like billions of dollars worth of these things. So interesting stuff. New weaponry coming right around the time that we have all this UAP phenomenon.
Well, Secretary of War Hegseth just got a live demonstration of directed energy weapons. He says the Pentagon intends to buy tens to hundreds of these in the coming years. It's the first known viewing of a directed energy weapon demonstration by a sitting war secretary. So what are they? Directed energy weapons fire concentrated energy at the speed of light. And for years, intelligence officials working abroad have reported brain injuries known as Havana syndrome. The condition could be linked to directed energy weapons. And earlier this week, we spoke to Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist Catherine Herridge, and she says the domestic threat is very real. Take a look.
Okay, I am going to stop right there. This gal that's coming up next, she claims that the powers that be, maybe it's the government or the shadow government or even some of these companies testing technology on citizens. I've heard that before. I've also heard that they use these energy weapons to kill a couple of those scientists or vaporize them. Those are the scientists that went missing, and they all had connections with either nuclear weaponry or even UAP whistleblowers. So let's see what she has to say.
But I think this idea that there aren't domestic attacks and that they haven't targeted civilians is just not correct. It's not borne out by the evidence. And again, the trend that I'm seeing is that the cadence of attacks inside the United States, I think, has escalated. My information is only anecdotal, but I do believe that the 4 years under the Biden administration where we said there's nothing to see here, there's no novel weapon, there's no foreign adversary, I think this was a tremendous disservice and emboldened those who are behind it.
you would say it's an extension of Tesla technology, the ability to move energy from point A to point B without the conventional means of, warheads and things like that. A standard weapon delivers an explosion, but through a conventional means. It's a payload. So instead of having the conventional method of delivery, directed energy weapons just deliver that explosive force sometimes from point A to point B wirelessly. That's one method. Directed energy weapons is a very large umbrella term. So make no mistake, it's a varied arsenal.
And you can't see it, so it feels like it's almost impossible to defend against it. We'll get to that in a second. So
these direct energy weapons are pretty high speed. They've been in use for a while, and as Eric said, they are a wide variety. But as you alluded to, the Havana syndrome, these have been used for a while, and they can be debilitating. I think the president kind of let it slip that we used some of the stuff during absolute resolve when we went in there to get Maduro. So these, it's a new level of warfare, but it's definitely leveling the playing field.
Pretty cool stuff, huh? I would like to mention this in First Enoch chapter 8, and I can't remember the exact verse, but it does talk about these watchers who did come down from heaven, and they lusted after our women. That's where these giants came from. They had sex with human women, and that was a big no-no. But the fathers who gave away their daughters to these things, they wanted something for it, and it talks about it. That I believe it was Azazel. It was one of the two big ones. Anyways, had given humanity, taught humans how to make swords and shields and armor, the ability to kill one another. So, could this be a repeat? Maybe so. Only time will tell. But again, thanks for coming by, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And if you get a chance, please like and subscribe. But most of all, I'd love to hear what you have to say. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'm no expert. So any commentary is welcome. And here in a couple of days, I will be bringing out or producing another video, and I am going to go through those hearings, and there were 7 hours of it, but it's already been downloaded, and it'll take a little while to shuffle through all of it because I don't want to bore everybody with 2 hours worth of people flapping their gums. I just want to get the highlights of it. So thank you again, and just remember, keep your head on a swivel so that way you are not deceived. Take care.